The gym was almost empty when the night shift began. The kind of quiet that felt too heavy for a place usually buzzing with gloves hitting pads and voices shouting instructions. And the only sound echoing through the dim training hall was the soft, rhythmic sweep of a broom against the rubber mats as Marcus, the black janitor who worked the late hours, moved slowly across the floor, cleaning up sweat and chalk from the fighters who had trained earlier that evening. And although most people barely noticed him beyond a quick nod, Marcus carried himself with a strange stillness, a confidence that didn't match his faded gray uniform or the way his hands moved with the easy patience of someone used to being invisible. The few remaining fighters had already left, all except one Ethan Carver, the golden boy of the gym, a black belt with trophies lining the office walls and a reputation for winning every spar he ever agreed to, a man who trained like he breathed, who walked with the casual arrogance of someone convinced the world had already decided his greatness for him. And tonight, he stayed behind, stretching in front of the mirror with the hum of self-satisfaction. Ethan noticed Marcus sweeping near the corner and smirked to himself. He had seen the janitor watch sparring sessions more than once, leaning discreetly by the doorway during breaks, and Ethan, soaked in pride from a recent amateur championship win, felt the rush of a dangerous idea wrap around his ego. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was that need elite fighters sometimes felt, the urge to show someone beneath them the difference between the trained and the untrained, or maybe it was the strange, almost unreadable.com in Marcus's eyes every time their paths crossed. A steady, measuring gaze Ethan pretended not to notice but secretly resented, because it felt like the janitor wasn't impressed, wasn't intimidated, wasn't awed the way people usually were. Ethan stood, cracked his neck, and approached him with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, tossing his gloves lightly in the air before catching them again. "Hey man," he said, his tone friendly but carrying a sharp undertone. "You're here every night watching us. You ever wonder what it feels like to be in the ring? To go a round or two, just for fun?" Marcus paused, resting his broom against the wall, wiping his hands casually on his pant leg, his expression unreadable, as though he were deciding whether this was worth his time or just another joke disguised as an invitation. Ethan chuckled, nudging him lightly with an elbow. "Come on, a light spar, nothing serious. I'll go easy." A couple trainers passing by overheard and laughed, whispering among themselves as they gathered their bags, half excited, half because the idea of a famous black belt sparring with the night janitor was too ridiculous not to talk about. Marcus looked around the quiet gym and exhaled softly. Not nervous, not excited, just calm as if this moment were something he had already predicted, and then he nodded once. "All right," he said. "For fun?" Ethan grinned wide, already imagining the playful taps he'd throw, the way he'd impress the trainers on their way out, the stories they'd tell later about how he gave the janitor a taste of real fighting. They suited up, Ethan bouncing lightly on his feet, Marcus moving without hurry, tightening the borrowed gloves with precise motions as though he'd done this 1,000 times before. The trainers stayed to watch, standing near the ropes, whispering bets, their amusement bubbling louder as Ethan strutted confidently to the center. When Marcus stepped inside the ring, the atmosphere changed subtly, quietly but enough that even Ethan sensed a shift, though he brushed it off as adrenaline. The bell wasn't even rung. Ethan clapped his gloves together and said, "Ready?" Marcus simply nodded again. The moment Ethan stepped forward, planning to throw a light jab to test the waters, Marcus moved not fast, not aggressive, but with a fluid certainty that froze Ethan mid, because before his punch even extended, Marcus had already slipped to the side, pivoting effortlessly, leaving Ethan punching air. The trainers straightened, surprised. Ethan blinked, unsure what happened, resetting his stance, telling himself he misjudged the angle. He tried again, faster this time, a clean jab cross combination he'd used to drop fighters in real matches. But Marcus moved with the eerie ease of someone who had seen every angle before it happened, bending, weaving, letting the punches skim past him like wind, not flinching, not struggling, just dancing through the spaces Ethan didn't even know he'd left open. Ethan's confidence cracked, confusion flashing across his face, because this wasn't luck or randomness, this was skill, real skill. He snarled under his breath, embarrassed, feeling the trainer's eyes on him, and came in harder, switching stances, increasing speed, throwing a hook followed by a low kick. But Marcus stepped inside the arc of the hook with perfect timing and gently tapped Ethan's chest with a short, controlled knuckle so light, it barely counted as a strike, but placed so cleanly that everyone watching went silent. Ethan stumbled back a step, stunned by the precision more than the impact, his heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and anger. "What was that?" he muttered, shaking his head, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Ethan charged again, pride burning hotter now, throwing real strikes, real power. The kind that made opponents fold, the kind that scared newcomers. But Marcus moved through them like water, smooth, quiet, impossibly calm, reading Ethan's attacks before they finished leaving his body. A sudden hush spread across the gym as the trainers leaned forward, wide-eyed, whispering among themselves in disbelief. Ethan's breath grew heavy. His strikes became wild. Sweat slid down his temples. And Marcus still hadn't thrown a single real punch. He was teaching Ethan, humbling him without ever hurting him. "Stop playing with me," Ethan yelled, his voice cracking with panic, swinging a frustrated kick. Marcus stepped in again, catching Ethan's leg effortlessly, guiding it down, placing his palm gently on Ethan's shoulder, and pushing him back, not harshly, not dramatically, but in a way that made Ethan lose balance and hit the mat on one knee. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked up, chest heaving, eyes burning with humiliation, all arrogance stripped from him. Marcus stepped back politely, giving him space to stand, the same calm expression on his face, as if nothing unusual had happened. The trainers exchanged glances, some grinning nervously, others whispering, "Who is this guy? Where did he learn that?" Ethan stood slowly, shaken, his voice small now. You trained before." Marcus didn't answer immediately. He loosened the gloves, placing them neatly near the ropes, then looked at Ethan with eyes carrying an old kind of depth, something earned through years, not days. "I didn't come here to fight," he said quietly, "just to work." And somehow, that made the moment even heavier. Ethan swallowed hard, all his bravado gone. The gym felt different, now not his arena anymore, not his kingdom. For the first time, he wasn't the strongest man in the room. As Marcus bent to continue his cleaning, Ethan stared at him in stunned silence, desperately trying to figure out who he really was. Because the way Marcus moved wasn't something you picked up casually. It came from experience, deep experience, maybe military, maybe underground fighting circuits, maybe something far more dangerous. And the trainers whispered theories as they left, unable to shake the chills the spar had given them. Ethan remained standing alone long after Marcus left the ring, replaying the movements in his mind. The effortless grace, the unreadable calm, the sense that Marcus had seen things far beyond anything Ethan had faced in his controlled, rule-bound matches. Outside the gym, the streetlights flickered as Marcus walked into the night, disappearing into the darkness like someone used to staying hidden. Ethan watched him from the doorway, his heart pounding with a mix of fear, curiosity, and something and as the scene faded, the suspense only deepened, because Ethan realized something chilling. Marcus wasn't just good, he was extraordinary. And people like that didn't end up mopping floors for no reason. If you're watching this story on YouTube right now, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, which country or city, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support the channel. Ethan couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as replay after replay of Marcus's movements flashed through his mind like a loop he couldn't shut off. Each slip, each effortless dodge, each perfectly calculated counter echoing louder than the last, until Ethan finally sat up, drenched in sweat, realizing that the humiliation he felt wasn't just about losing control of the spar, it was about the truth that stared him dead in the face. Marcus wasn't an ordinary janitor. He wasn't some undertrained spectator. He wasn't a lucky fluke who caught him off guard. He was someone who knew combat deeply, intimately, like it was etched into his bones. And the more Ethan thought about it, the more obsessed he became. The next day, the gym hummed with whispers, rumors spreading like sparks across dry grass. Every trainer, every fighter talking about the late-night spar that no one had expected to witness. And though many had left before the end, they retold the story with wide eyes, as if it were something mythical, a legend that grew with every retelling, some saying Marcus moved like a shadow, others swearing they saw Ethan nearly faint from shock. And Ethan, walking into the gym early that morning, could feel every stare, every smirk, every curious glance digging into him, not in mockery, but with shaken respect, because no one had ever seen him outclassed ever. He headed straight to the ring, trying to refocus, trying to bury the memory under hours of drills and rounds of sparring, pushing himself harder than ever. But every punch he threw felt off, sloppy, predictable, because every movement reminded him of how Marcus had read him like an open book. By mid-afternoon, his coach, an old man named Ruiz who rarely sugar-coated anything, walked up to him with a towel slung over his shoulder and said flatly, "You're fighting ghosts today, kid." Ethan didn't argue. He just nodded and kept hitting the bag. Ruiz studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You want to talk about what happened last night?" Ethan froze. His pride wanted to say no, but his curiosity was louder. "Coach," he finally said, turning around, "who do you think he is?" Ruiz raised an eyebrow. "You telling me the janitor did all that?" Ethan nodded silently. Ruiz let out a low whistle. "Then you better pray he doesn't want your spot on the roster." Ethan didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He just asked, "Did we ever run a background check on him?" Ruiz shook his head. "He's a janitor, not a fighter. We don't check much." Ethan felt a cold ripple down his spine. Maybe we should. Later that night, when the gym emptied again and dusk settled in, Ethan stayed behind, pretending to stretch, pretending to train, but he was waiting for Marcus to come in, waiting for answers he didn't even know how to ask. And right on cue, as the clock hit 11, the main door creaked open and Marcus walked in, carrying his cleaning supplies, his face calm as always, nodding once in Ethan's direction like nothing unusual had happened. Ethan swallowed hard, his heart pounding as he approached him. "Marcus," he began, voice steady but nervous. "About last night?" Marcus cut him off without looking up. "No need to explain. You did fine." Ethan blinked, thrown off. "Fine, you practically toyed with me." Marcus finally looked up, his eyes soft but unreadable. I didn't toy with you. You were just predictable. The words hit Ethan harder than any punch he'd ever taken. But instead of anger, he felt something else, respect mixed with desperation. Teach me, Ethan blurted out. Marcus paused. Teach you what? Whatever you know, Ethan said quickly. Whatever that was, I need to learn it. Marcus looked away, picking up his mop, moving toward the ring as if he hadn't heard the plea, and Ethan followed him helplessly. Please, he insisted. I'm serious. Marcus stopped at the edge of the mat, leaning on the handle of the mop slightly. You don't want what I know. Ethan frowned. Why not? Marcus hesitated, and for a moment a shadow crossed his expression. A heaviness Ethan had never seen before, something that looked like guilt or memory or maybe both. Because some knowledge doesn't come from training, Marcus said quietly. It comes from surviving. Ethan didn't understand, but before he could press further, the gym door opened and two men walked in, strangers Ethan had never seen before. Tall, heavy, wearing dark jackets that didn't fit the gym's usual crowd. Marcus stiffened instantly, his posture changing so subtly Ethan almost missed it. But the air around him tightened, sharpened, like a quiet storm forming. The men approached slowly, scanning the room with eyes that weren't here to train. Marcus Reeds? One of them asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately, but his jaw tightened. Ethan looked at him and shocked. He hadn't even known Marcus's last name. We've been looking for you, the second man said, his voice low and threatening. Ethan stepped forward, confused and concerned. Hey, what's going on? The first man smirked. This doesn't concern you, kid. Back off. Ethan bristled. He works here. If you've got something to say before he could finish, the second man snapped. I said back off. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying a warning sharp enough to slice through the room. Leave him out of this. The men exchanged glances. You know the rules. Reed, the first one said. You disappear. We retrieve you. One way or another. Ethan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Retrieve. Disappear. Marcus wasn't looking at them like he looked at gym members. He was looking at them like someone who had escaped. Someone who had been hunted before. Someone who knew exactly what these men were capable of. Ethan stepped closer to Marcus, lowering his voice. Who are they? Marcus whispered back. People I left behind. Ethan's jaw tightened. Left behind. From what? Marcus didn't answer. The first man reached for Marcus's arm, but before Ethan could react, before he could even blink, Marcus's entire body shifted, his stance tightening with a fluid violence Ethan had only glimpsed the night before, and in one explosive motion, Marcus twisted the man's wrist, flipped him to the ground, and swept the second man's legs out with lethal precision. Ethan gasped. This wasn't the calm dance from the spar. This was real combat, efficient and dangerous. The first man groaned, clutching his arm. You're gonna regret that. Reed, he spat. Marcus grabbed his collar, pulling him close. I already do, he whispered, then shoved him back. The men stumbled toward the exit, shooting Marcus dark looks. You can't hide forever, one said before they disappeared into the night. After they were gone, silence hung thick in the gym, vibrating with tension. Ethan stared at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. Marcus, he whispered, what are you running from? Marcus didn't move for a long moment, breathing slowly, staring at the door, as if expecting the men to burst back in at any second. Finally, he turned toward Ethan, eyes heavy with the truth he had tried to bury. I wasn't always a janitor, he said. I was part of something violent, something I should never have been part of. Ethan's chest tightened. A gang? Marcus shook his head. Worse, Ethan swallowed. Then why are they after you? Marcus exhaled deeply. Because I walked away. I saw what we were doing to people. I couldn't live with it anymore. So I left. Ethan stepped closer. And now they want you back. Marcus nodded. Or silenced. A chill ran through Ethan's body. Does anyone else know? No, Marcus said firmly. And it needs to stay that way. The gym doesn't need my past. It doesn't need my enemies. But Ethan wasn't thinking about the gym anymore. He was thinking about the controlled movements, the impossible precision, the almost supernatural calm Marcus carried, the kind that only came from surviving horrors most people couldn't imagine. Marcus put the mop away and grabbed his jacket. Forget about last night. Forget about tonight. You don't want to be part of this. Ethan reached out, grabbing Marcus's arm instinctively. I can't forget, and I'm not walking away. Marcus met his eyes, and for the first time, Ethan saw something like fear, though not for himself, but for Ethan. Kid, Marcus said quietly, if you stay close to me, you might not survive what's coming. Ethan didn't flinch. Then teach me. Whatever you know, whatever kept you alive, teach me, so I can survive it too. Marcus stared at him for a long, tense moment, then finally whispered, this ends badly for people like me. Ethan, it always does. Ethan shook his head. Not this time. Marcus looked away, the weight of destiny pressing against him like a physical force. And the gym's lights flickered as if the universe itself were warning them that a storm was coming, one darker, bigger, and deadlier than anything they had imagined. And as the night deepened, as both men walked out into the shadowed street, neither noticed the black SUV parked across the road, engine running silently, headlights off, watching, waiting, following, because Marcus's past wasn't just coming back, it had already arrived. The following night, the gym felt colder, quieter, as if it sensed that something dark hovered just outside its walls. And Ethan arrived early, pacing the mats with restless energy, replaying every moment from the night before. The two men, the threats, Marcus's dangerous precision, the heavy truth that he wasn't just a janitor, but someone who had walked out of a violent world that refused to let him go. Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and determination swirling in his chest. Part of him knew he should stay away, let Marcus handle his own demons, but another part, stronger, louder, refused to back down, because Marcus had humbled him, protected him, and now, whoever those men were, they were coming back, and Ethan wasn't about to let Marcus face them alone. When the clock neared 11, Ethan's heart thudded faster, and right on cue, the main door opened and Marcus stepped inside. But this time he paused when he saw Ethan waiting in the center of the gym, hands wrapped, body tense with readiness. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said, closing the door behind him. Ethan shook his head. "I told you I'm not walking away," Marcus exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Kid, you don't understand what you're stepping into. Those men last night, they weren't the worst of them. They were scouts. And if scouts found me, the others won't be far behind." Ethan swallowed hard but didn't move. "Then teach me. If something's coming, I want to be ready." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded, though his eyes carried a sadness that felt like a warning. "Fine," he said quietly, "but if we're doing this, we do it right." And with that, Marcus dropped his jacket and stepped onto the mat, his posture shifting into something sharper, deadlier, a presence Ethan could feel like electricity in the air. "Rule 1, Marcus said, his voice low and steady as he circled Ethan. "A real fight is not about strength. It's about survival, and survival means efficiency. No wasted energy, no ego. You move only when you must." Ethan nodded, trying to mirror his stance. Marcus continued. "Rule 2, never assume your opponent will fight fair. People from my past don't fight to win, they fight to end." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Rule 3, Marcus said softly, never hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed." Ethan tried to focus, tried to absorb every word. Every tiny movement. Marcus demonstrated how to shift weight, how to read body language, how to see an attack before it started. For hours they trained, Marcus pushing Ethan harder than any coach ever had, correcting every mistake, sharpening every strike, molding Ethan's skills into something more precise, more instinctive, until the fear that had haunted Ethan since the spar began to turn into something else. When they finally stopped, both breathless and dripping with sweat, Marcus sat beside Ethan on the mat and stared at the empty gym. "You're learning fast," he said quietly. Ethan nodded, still catching his breath. "What were you part of, Marcus?" he finally asked. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned back, eyes distant. "I was recruited young," he said. "Too young to understand what I was joining. It wasn't a gang. It wasn't military. It was something in between. A covert group that worked outside the law. We did things the world never heard about. Missions that left scars no one could see." Ethan listened, every nerve on edge. "We were trained to be invisible," Marcus continued. "To move through shadows, to strike without hesitation. We were good, too good. But eventually, I saw what we were doing. Not justice, not protection, but cleaning up messes for people with power. People who didn't care who died as long as their secrets stayed buried. I couldn't be part of that, so I left." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "And now they want you back." Marcus nodded, or silenced. "People who leave the organization rarely stay alive for long. They don't like loose ends." Ethan shivered. "So what do we do?" Marcus looked at him, and for the first time Ethan saw something like hope flicker behind his eyes. "We survive," Marcus said, "but surviving means being one step ahead." As if on cue, the gym lights flickered, then went out, plunging the room into near darkness. Ethan froze. Marcus stood instantly. "They're here," he whispered. In the silence that followed, Ethan could hear footsteps outside. The low rumble of engines, the unmistakable sound of multiple people moving in formation. Marcus grabbed Ethan's shoulder. "Stay behind me, no matter what." The emergency lights kicked on, bathing the gym in a dim red glow, and the front door burst open as 5 men stormed inside, all wearing tactical gear, their movements synchronized and deadly. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Reed," he said in a cold, controlled voice, "you've run long enough." Marcus stepped in front of Ethan, body coiled with tension. "Let the kid go," he said. The leader smirked. "He's a witness now. You know the rules." Ethan felt fear clamp around his throat, but he didn't step back. Not after everything Marcus had taught him. Not now. The men closed in. Marcus whispered, "Ethan, when I move, you follow. Use what I taught you. Trust your instincts." Ethan nodded, heart pounding so hard it shook his bones. Then everything exploded. One of the men lunged at Marcus with a baton, but Marcus ducked under it, striking the man's ribs with a devastating elbow. Spinning behind him and using his body as a shield while another attacker charged. Ethan barely had time to react before someone grabbed him from behind. But he remembered Marcus's words, no hesitation, and he drove his elbow back into the man's stomach. twisted, and struck the side of his knee exactly where Marcus had taught him. The man collapsed with a pained grunt. Marcus took down 2 more with fluid brutality, every movement precise, efficient, deadly. But the men kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. Ethan fought off another attacker, adrenaline burning through him, but the leader moved forward, pulling out a Wapana taser modified for incapacitating targets instantly. He fired. Marcus grabbed Ethan and shoved him aside, taking the full shock himself. He hit the ground hard, convulsing, his body twitching violently as electricity coursed through him. "Marcus!" Ethan shouted, scrambling toward him. The leader stepped between them, aiming the taser again. "You were always the best, Reed," he said, his voice almost admiring. "But you forgot the one rule. No one leaves." Ethan didn't think. He moved. He dodged the leader's strike, grabbed the fallen baton from the floor, and swung it with all the force in his body, hitting the leader square across the side of his head. The man stumbled, shocked. Ethan hit him again, harder, knocking him to the ground. The other attackers hesitated for just a second, and that second was enough. Marcus, half conscious, forced himself up on one knee, grabbed another baton from the ground, and swept the remaining men's legs out with a powerful spinning strike, sending them crashing into each other. The leader tried to stand, groaning, but Ethan stepped forward, breath trembling with anger and fear, and raised the baton again. "Stay down," Ethan growled. The leader glared at him but didn't move. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors must have called the police after hearing the commotion. Marcus leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his body shaking from the shock. Ethan rushed to him. "Marcus, we have to go. Now." Marcus nodded weakly. "Help me up." Ethan wrapped Marcus's arm over his shoulder and guided him through the back exit as the sirens grew louder. They stumbled into the alley, cold night air hitting their faces like a lifeline, and moved quickly toward the shadows. Marcus winced in pain but kept going. "There's a safe place, a friend, outside town," he said through gritted teeth. "We can make it," Ethan nodded. "I'm not leaving you." Marcus gave him a tired, grateful look. "You shouldn't have fought them," he said softly. "You could have been killed." Ethan shook his head. "You saved my life. Twice, you think I'd just walk away." Marcus chuckled weakly. "You're stubborn. I learned from the best." They continued down the alley, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a gym that would become a crime scene by morning, a place where the janitor, no one noticed, had revealed he was far more than what he seemed, and where a black belt who once thought he knew everything discovered courage in the face of real danger. As they vanished into the darkness, Ethan knew one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't the end of Marcus's story. It was the beginning of a new fight, one that would test both of them in ways they couldn't imagine, but one they would face together.